Welcome to the Compass Method, powered by Purpose and Plants, where science meets soul and thriving begins when you find your true north. Hosted by Dr. Yolanda Rivera-Caudill, a double-board certified physician, mother of three, and founder of the Tiny Beat Lifestyle Medicine and Pediatric Clinic, and
Chelsea Dye, a certified lifestyle medicine coach, wellness strategist, and creator of Alchemist Untamed. This show brings the real science to real life, powered by our passion project, Purpose and Plan.
Each episode explores how small shifts in food, movement, mindset, and family life can create massive results. Together, Dr. Yolanda and I share a compass for better life, a grounded guide to plant-forward health, brain-body balance, and modern motherhood.
From pediatric wellness and family health to neuroscience, nutrition, and mindset mastery, we will help you pause with a purpose, align your habits with your values, and rediscover what it means to thrive.
Powered by Purpose and Plants, because thriving begins when you're powered by Purpose and Plants. Hi, I'm Chelsea Dye.
And I'm Dr. Yolanda Rivera-Caudill.
And we are the duo behind Purpose and Plants and the Compass Method podcast. Today, we are bringing you a very debated topic, the new food pyramid. The USDA just released the 2026 new food pyramid, which looks different than it has in the past. And this has brought up quite a bit of conversation surrounding our food choices in the United States. So we're here to bring you the good, the bad, and maybe a little bit of the ugly of how to interpret these new guidelines and what it means for us in general. So I think we would like to just dive right in. Dr. Yolanda, tell us a little bit about how this food pyramid differs from the last one.
Well, there are many things. The pyramid hasn't been in use for many, many years. So that's to start with. We're not comparing this pyramid with the previous one because the previous one was like many months ago.
Right.
So we're comparing with My Plate. Okay, and the recommendations that were in My Plate. And the truth is that most Americans do not necessarily follow this. That's the proof is in the pudding.
Yes, that's true.
That most people, if most Americans follow the previous My Plate guidelines, we wouldn't be in the state that we are in the nation health-wise.
Right. So Dr. Yolanda is talking about how chronic disease is at an all-time high. And we are finally seeing the connection. You know, we have been preaching this for quite a long time, that there's so much power in what you put in your mouth, what you put in your brain, and how you move your body. But specifically today, we're talking about what you put in your mouth. And so now there is a connect. People, specifically, the general governing bodies are acknowledging that there's a big connection between how you feed yourself and your health. And chronic disease is one of those things that we have to be aware of. And finally, they
have emphasized the importance of having real food versus processed food. And not that all processed food is bad, but the emphasis is then that we like to be having more real food in our plate.
Real whole food.
Real whole food.
Yes.
So that's a very welcome recommendation from the government. And
if you look at the top of the pyramid, you'll see on one side there is animal products and cheeses, which, we have our own opinion about. But then on the other side, at the very top of it, the pyramid has been flipped upside down, and there are lots of fruits and vegetables. So that is really focusing the attention on the fact that it's whole, real food.
And then the emphasis also that, on the highly processed foods, it's been also addressed. So it goes hand in hand. You have more real food, you hopefully eat less processed food. So
Well, and that brings up the other point that even though it's maybe not indicated fully in the visual of the pyramid, there's been a lot more calling out for ultra processed food, which, just as you brought up, packaged food and processed food are slightly different, but we're talking about the ultra processed food that's highly palatable, which is intended to be calorically dense, make you essentially addicted to it, and there is a complete connection between chronic disease and this ultra processed food. So finally, hallelujah, it's being declared as a really negative thing for the general American population.
Yes. Another thing which doesn't differ much from prior guidelines is, but they emphasize the importance of 10% of saturated fats as the maximum of that we consume, which we're going to talk a little bit more on that. But this is something is in the guidelines. They recommend that our diet shouldn't be more than 10% of the saturated fat, 10% saturated fat.
So let's take it back a notch. So saturated fat versus unsaturated fat versus, tell us about the different kinds of fats.
Yeah, the saturated fat is, all animals have saturated fats. That's there. The coconut is one source of a plant that has saturated fats. But aside from that, all animal sources have saturated fats. Then
Specifically red meat has a high percentage of saturated fats.
Yes. But they all are saturated fats.
Yes, they all do.
There's some have more than others.
Yeah.
And of course, cheese and butter, it's all animal products. And then the polyunsaturated and the monounsaturated fats, which is more the plant-based oils and fats, and they're more in avocado, olive oil, and sources like that, walnuts. So that's the kind that we like to have more, and then, no more than 10%. If you do not need to have saturated fat in your diet, but if you do, it shouldn't be more than 10% saturated fats.
Yes.
Okay. So that's one of the things that they recommend. The limit of sodium intake, that's great news, less than 2.3 milligrams, 2,300 milligrams per kilo per day for adults. And they do mention, like you mentioned, like half of the pyramid is fruits and veggies, which is fantastic.
Woohoo!
Yes.
Our
so
plant-forward
those are great things.
Cheering,
They still recommend, like prior guidelines, 3 vegetables, 2 fruits a day, which is fantastic. If, is not a lot.
No.
But if you come from 0 or 1 or 2 a week, this is, I wish more people will follow this.
Yes.
Yeah. This is a welcome recommendation. And we know that, for example, 90% of people in the United States and our kids fail to have the fiber that they need.
Right. And so plant sources are pretty much the only source of fiber.
Yes.
And so that means that the majority of the American population is not consuming an adequate amount of fruits and vegetables. And that's not even meeting the guidelines of 3 vegetables and 2 fruits. That's just in general. They're not having enough fiber. 95% of the American population, which is shocking. And then just to bring up another statistic going back to the ultra-processed food, is over 50% of the American diet as of now is based off of ultra processed food, and I think this, but it's pretty shocking when I was doing the research that the largest consumers of ultra processed food are teenagers, children and teenagers.
Yeah, especially teenagers, because they start having acquisition access to them for themselves. They can buy their things without the parents telling them, and that's one of the reasons why they consume more than the kids. The kids still are controlled by the parents.
Yes,
and the adolescents, they have more acquisition power. And one of the things that I love to see in the guidelines was that they encourage adolescents to become active participants in food shopping and cooking so they can learn how to make healthy food choices for life. I mean, being someone that at the Tiny Beat, I have a workshop for kids to be involved in their preparation of their foods from toddlers and above. This was like music to my ears. So those are good things that we saw in there. And then they also tend to to limit more food groups that are more nutrient rich, dense than foods that are high in sugar.
Yes.
Yeah. So those are great things about the pyramid. Yeah.
And the reduction of added sugar, there was a note, that added sugars should be reduced, and specifically sugary beverages, because those account for a tremendous amount of empty calories in the American population diet, and that's something that we really need to be aware of. So I love that.
What are empty calories for people that don't know?
Empty calories that are not nutrient dense, that don't do anything for your body, and
They're calories.
Yep, they're
with nothing else
right.
but calories.
Yes, exactly. So soda and sugary beverages, specifically, I think that we're in an age where everything comes with a sports beverage. You step on the court and you're supposed to have a sports beverage. Well,
and it's assumed for kids that this is something that they need to perform in sports. It's so sad because you see it everywhere. Like, this is something that is needed, or else. And I don't know. They're not going to be good sports person.
Which we know is not true, but now we're actually identifying that is an unnecessary thing to be adding to our diet, and we should limit or completely eliminate that. Water instead. That's a really great choice.
Yeah, and then there are other choices like coconut water, and there's some other things like electrolytes that have electrolytes
hibiscus
too.
tea. I'm a big fan of that, iced hibiscus tea. Beet juice, yes. That might not be of the palate of most children, but at the same time, it's very worthwhile.
Yes.
So, those are some of the changes that we've seen, and I would like to just say hallelujah to the fact that we are actually acknowledging the connection between food and chronic disease. But we also need to draw attention to, just as you and I talk about a lot in our Purpose in Plants, that it's the whole picture. It's just the whole lifestyle, that, the sedentary component, well, that's not addressed in the food pyramid. That is something that can accelerate chronic disease.
And it's interesting because looking at this, getting ready to understand this, we looked at the pyramids, and there are some pyramids in other parts of the world, and some of them address physical activity and sleep. It's very interesting. It's more comprehensive because they had acknowledged it's not just the food, it's a whole thing, it's lifestyle in general. So,
well, and some of them, and I don't remember which one, I feel like it was a Danish country, maybe some sort of Northern European country that addressed the water intake and how much water you should be having. So, that is a really important thing too. It's really basic, foundational, but somehow we've gotten so far away at this point from the foundation.
Yeah. Even in our plate, the last one, my plate, it had the milk in there versus other places that they call for water to drink rather than the milk itself. So, yes.
Although this is maybe a positive step forward in some ways, why do you think it's been debated and talked about? And
it has many contradictions, for example. One of the things that is concerning, it's just a contradiction. It's very hard to maneuver for someone that wants to read the small print. And for example, the fats, okay? You have a pyramid where visually you see half of if you just go by that and don't read the fine print, you see, half of my plate should have a steak and the other half, it should be vegetables and fruits and a little piece of bread, whole bread, ideally. But when you see the fine print, they stick to the recommendation of 10% of saturated fat, as we mentioned. But when you do the math, when you start trying to see how does that look in a person's diet, it's really hard to accomplish. To begin with, you have to start with a piece of steak that looks no more than the palm of your hand, which is perfectly fine, but most people don't see that, especially when visually this is what you're seeing. This is half, so I can have my big, humongous steak and a little potatoes and a carrot on the side and call it a day, a healthy day.
Right.
And that's not necessarily what they say when you read the fine print. So that's a very difficult thing to understand.
Yes. Just to reiterate this, I think you're absolutely right that most people are not looking at the fine print, and people see what they want to see. I think we've all fallen prey to that in one capacity or another. And so if those who are big meat lovers love the meat, they may not even be discerning as to what quality and kind, and that might also include processed meats. If they see which are highly problematic, there's a link between processed meats and as carcinogens and
Definitely.
And so
And it's interesting because looking at, and we will address that too, but looking at other parts of the world, they do address like the meat should, if you want to eat processed meat, like in spaces like Spain and Italy that they like, their their prosciutto and their serrano, they said it's just, they put it at the top of the pyramid. Normally the pyramid, the base is what you eat the most.
Yes.
So they put it like that, and that the tip is sugary stuff and things like processed meats because they acknowledge that this is associated with cancer. The other thing that is very concerning is they mentioned that it's a fight on, or like something, protein, to bring it to the forefront because of the fight of protein. We do not have a nation that is lacking protein. There is only a very few amount of people that are really, really having severe illness will have a protein deficiency. Most people in the United States are fiber deficient.
Yes.
So I think it's very concerning and very difficult to understand. You're having this fight for protein, they added the recommendations for protein, which most people don't really need that much. It was okay for the majority of the people to have the amount that we had before. And that's okay. If you do a lot of exercise, you definitely will be perfectly fine at that level. But for most people, it's really not necessary.
Yes.
And for older people too.
Right. Well, and talking about the protein, we've become very crazed as a culture with protein. And specifically, there's been more of a highlight on perimenopause and menopause and hormonal shifts. And with that, there's been recommendations for added protein to the woman's diet. Well, we are not here to talk about that. At the same time, protein has become a very important topic of conversation. But to go back to the fact that you say, and it's true that most people are not protein deficient, that's interesting that they would really try to hit that home in the food pyramid. And just for those who don't know, the suggested amount of protein intake per kilogram of body weight is 1.2 to 2 grams of protein. So 1.2 to 2 grams of protein for every kilogram of body weight. And that's, for adults.
Yes.
And so when you do the math on and not pounds, kilograms.
Yes, kilograms.
So when you do the math on your own body weight, I think you'll see that most people are actually within the recommended guidelines. Well, within.
For the most part.
Yes.
Yeah. The other thing, it doesn't addresses the fact that beans, for example, legumes are proteins. And then again, they mention it in the fine print, but most people don't see the fine print. I think in the picture, you cannot even see the beans. As a difference, for example, in the Canadian plate, you can see that where the part that they address the protein, it has tofu, it has beans, it has other sources of protein that are just as good. And it's been proven that they're just as good and nutritious, and then they have fiber too. So you're killing two birds with the same stone. Another thing that it hurts some people that, I think some people will think that they have to have that big piece of steak in order to feed their family, and that can be very expensive.
Oh, yes.
So it doesn't addresses that either. So there's several times a week, if you don't want to be completely, which we don't advocate that, if you want to do it, it's definitely a good option, but it doesn't have to be, for you to be healthy, to be completely plant-based. But certain days of the week, you can switch the animal protein for plant protein, and then you have more nutrients, and it's so much easier on the budget of family.
And actually really easier on the digestive system as
yeah,
well.
as well.
But, that brings up the point of people have to really look at the fine print or listen to us because it's not a one-size-all proposition. And one thing that, going back to the layout of the food pyramid, well, okay, we took it from a pyramid that was the traditional pyramid into a flipped upside down. But what I found really interesting, and mind you, it was given by the USDA, U.S. Department of Agriculture, and that we have animals and milk and beef and other animal products that are reliant on the USDA to help them, that the food pyramid reads left to right. So from the way that we read, you would see that the animal proteins are on the top left. So that's the first thing you're going to look at. According to our culture, that's how you look at something visually. So it's just interesting that would be on the top left as opposed to the
Yes.
but not to bring in the conspiracy theory, but just at the same time, I think that's something to note.
I hope that this is not taken anything political or anything like that, because it's not. It's really based on the science. And another concern is that the scientific advisory committee has been working on this. This is a group of people, of scientists that have been working. It's a volunteer, because it's such an honor for them to be part of this. And they worked for about 2 years to create these new guidelines. And then at the end of last year, they said, no, all this 400 or something pages that you created, we're not going to use. We're going to do something simpler, because what you have is too complicated. We're going to make it easier. And then they grab some people that are in the industry, in the cattle industry, in the dairy industry, and they created what we just saw. So it's very concerning. This is that contradiction, and that and the other thing is things for people that have, like you said, for monetary problems, and even for people with different dietary problems, like Asian, or people that have intolerances to lactose. For example, there's not that much in terms of guidance for that.
Yes, and there are quite a few people, the population, I don't know the exact percentage, but lactose intolerance is a very common thing. And the recommendation of milk, full fat milk and dairy is a really interesting one. And then for those that are going purely on the picture, and then in addition maybe have some budgetary constraints, that makes it extra challenging.
And it is confusing completely. I can cook with butter, but if you start cooking with butter, that by itself goes your 10%.
Yes.
In your whole day, maybe.
And
you have much more room for anything else.
And the beef tallow is a brand new one as well.
Yes.
And this has been debated quite a lot, and whether it's actually beneficial for our health at all. But we're not here to necessarily bring that up. It's just interesting to look at the beef tallow being added as a source of healthy fat that is recommended if we're going to look at the pyramid as guidance.
No, and then again, comparing to the data, that's all you have to see. And we will have in the show notes, we have some sources of information where you can look at the data again and compare with other people of the parts of the world. They do advise overall. There's so much information that is not the best source. Not that you cannot have it. It's just that it shouldn't be the main source of fats in your day.
Yes, absolutely. So, we brought up some of the contradictions. I think that the takeaway, if you can take it as that, as in a more simplistic way, is more fruits and vegetables. And
Variety of colors,
variety.
half of your plate.
Which is what I really liked about the pyramid. I liked that it was
Yes.
colorful.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my visual,
half of it.
my desire for eye candy, but that's
Yes.
really beneficial.
And then yes, try to keep the 10%. Look, do your math yourself. 10% of the calories of the your consumption of fat shouldn't be saturated fats. So you can see, and we can have some examples of that in the show notes or on the website. Mostly.
I think we have a few minutes to go over just a few recommendations as to how, if you're going to, we are a plant-based duo, so we live a plant-based life, and while it may not be perfect for everyone, it certainly is easier on your pocketbook, and with strategy and some planning, it can be a really helpful way to live your life. So, some of the ways that you could incorporate healthy fats, if that is your goal, and not include the butter and the tallow, are avocado, seeds and nuts,
walnuts. Yeah, exactly.
extra virgin olive oil. Yeah, those are some really good options that you might want to use in lieu of the butter and the tallow.
Yes.
Do you want to talk any about the recommendations for meat and what you see in the data about the consumption of meat on a daily basis?
Well, again, red meat is category 2, I think it is, in the WHO
World Health Organization.
Yes, recommend a list of carcinogens. So it's not that the processed meat is category 1. So what does that mean is most likely, there is a strong association that is linked to cancer, colon cancer particularly. And
Colorectal cancer is connected to
the consumption of, and then what are processed meats? These are the pepperoni, the sausages,
the lunch meats that are so commonly in our children's lunches, whether they're coming from the school lunch or
hot dogs.
Yeah, hot dogs. Yeah, or
all these. It is really correlated with cancer, colorectal cancer, and red meats are in a different category. Kind of like they're still considered a concern for cancer. So it is a concern when you have that every day from childhood and above, especially when you see the children's menu, it's pizza and hot dogs is usually what they have. And another concern that I have, which we're going to talk more of the concerns, the next one, but is that these guidelines might not apply. Most people might not see it, but they dictate what goes in the kids' plates and wig and all that.
Yes, so they dictate, just to for our viewers, our listeners, these guidelines are important in that they're educating the general population. However, on an even larger front, they're impacting how we're feeding our children at school. And so often, not only are children receiving lunch, many of them are subsidized in order to receive breakfast as well. So that's 2 out of 3 meals that they're being fed using these guidelines. And if the cost component of things of providing really good quality animal products that are not ultra processed is a challenge, and that's where I see a contradiction.
And even for economy to feed that much meat into the plates of children, that we can have other alternatives. Yes.
So it'll be interesting to see, because these guidelines could impact, if used in a way that's both smart from a budgetary standpoint and then from a health standpoint, these guidelines could help to educate the the school lunch program to make it more fiber dense, if so choose, with more whole plant-based foods. But I don't know that that's the way it's going to go. One can hope.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So let's summarize.
And are there any other things that you want to bring up before we close this this first one of two out? And we'll be talking about more contradictions in the second one.
No, I mean, basically, do you have anything else in mind?
No, I think, just looking back at crowding out, when we think about portions, you brought up something really important regardless.
They do mention that in the guidelines too,
Yes.
about calories. Yes.
And so if you are including animal products in your diet, be mindful of the quantity and remember that they are more dense and will likely make you feel more full. And so make sure to leave room for all of those 3 vegetables and 2 fruits, plus.
Yes.
And don't forget the animal or the plant forward proteins.
Yes.
Because those are really excellent, cost-effective sources for you and your family.
And I like the idea that you can kill 2 birds with the same stone. You can get fiber and you can get protein.
Yes.
At once.
Exactly.
And especially in the stomach of children, that there's so much that they can take. This is a great bang for your buck.
Exactly. So crowd out, drop the sugary beverages, be smart, read the fine print, and the last note is don't forget to move your body, because movement, sleep, connection, community, mindfulness are all part of a healthy life. The diet is just one part of it, but movement is key.
Yes.
Yes.
Y ahora vamos a hablar un poquito en español un resumen de lo que estábamos hablando. Estamos hablando de las guías de dieta en los Estados Unidos, en las nuevas, que enfatizan, si la ven, la parte de izquierda, van a ver, es todo carne y productos animales, y en la izquierda, en la derecha, colores, vegetales, y abajo, granos. Pero y hay cosas buenas, porque están enfatizando que comamos comidas saludables, comidas de la casa, comidas enteras, no comidas de paquetes. Pero la realidad del caso es que hay cosas buenas como eso, pero hay cosas que son bien contradictorias, porque te piden que sea un 10% de esa grasa animal que no sea grasa saturada. Y eso es muy difícil de hacerlo si tenemos esa distribución de que es la mitad del plato. Dijimos de eso y hablamos también de, por ejemplo, que nosotros en Estados Unidos como nación tenemos una dieta baja en fibra, no baja en proteína. So, como nación tenemos que comer más fibra, no necesariamente más proteína. Y eso no lo dice la guía. So, básicamente eso es lo que hablamos. En las notas pueden traducirlo y ver el resto del episodio. Muchas gracias por estar con nosotros.
Yes. So, once again, thank you for joining us for the Compass Method. This was part 1 of 2 of our new food pyramid. So we're breaking down the guidelines and what they mean for you. And I'm Chelsea Dye.
I'm Dr. Yolanda Rivera-Caudill, and thank you for joining us.
Find your true north. Cheers.